The Nevidians had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of being unremarkable. Their cities floated silently through the clouds of their gas giant home, harvesting energy from the eternal storms below. Their ships slipped through space like whispers, powered by engines that bent light rather than pushed against it. Even their language was a subtle thing. More silence than sound, meaning carried on careful modulations of their bioluminescent skin. They were proud of their restraint, their careful cultivation of peace. While other species fought wars over territory and resources, the Nevidians simply found ways to need less. While others built weapons, they built libraries. While others sought to dominate, they sought to understand. First observer Nera stood at her post in the Great Archive, her skin rippling with patterns of contentment as she cataloged the day's astronomical data. The Nevidians' vast network of passive sensors stretched across 50 light years, watching, listening, learning, never interfering. That was their way. The first anomaly appeared in the outermost sensor ring, a shadow where there should have been light, a silence deeper than space itself. Naira's skin flickered with concern as she cross-referenced the reading. In 10,000 years of observations, she had never seen anything like it. The shadow was moving, growing, consuming. She sent the alert to the Council of Observers with minimal priority. After all, the Nevidians were not alarmists. They would study this phenomenon carefully, methodically, as they did all things. 3 days later, the colony world of Haven ceased all communications. The Council of Observers gathered in their floating chambers high above the storms. Their massive bodies, each the size of a small shuttle, crowded the space as their skin patterns flashed in rapid debate. The shadow had devoured Haven, not just the population. The entire planet had been broken down to its constituent atoms, absorbed into the growing mass that called itself the Void Collective. We must petition the Galactic Assembly for aid. First Speaker Cole's pattern stated. His skin rippled with distress, an unseemly display that nonetheless reflected the gravity of the situation. The Assembly has ignored our previous attempts at membership. Second Speaker Van countered, her patterns precise and controlled. They consider us too passive, too reluctant to participate in their power games. Then we must show them the severity of this threat, Cole insisted. The Void Collective's rate of expansion is exponential. Our models show they will reach the core worlds within 5 years. The debate continued for 3 more days, while the shadow grew larger. The Nevidians submitted their petition with all proper protocols observed, all forms filed in triplicate, all diplomatic channels properly respected. The Assembly's response came as Haven's remains were still being digested by the Void Collective. Thank you for your submission. Due to the high volume of applications, please expect a response within 3 to 5 standard cycles. A standard cycle was 2 Earth years. The Nevidians had never known desperation before. It felt like drowning in the storms below their cities, like watching their careful restraint crumble into panic. 2 more colonies fell while they waited for the Assembly's bureaucracy to turn. That's when Junior Observer Zera broke protocol in a way that would change everything. Instead of simply watching and recording, she began actively scanning frequencies that the Nevidians had always considered too crude to monitor. The channels used by traders, mercenaries, and others who operated in the spaces between proper civilization. She found them there. The outcasts. The rejects. The ones the Assembly had deemed too violent, too unstable, too different to join their ranks. The Pyrians, who burned with internal fire. The quantum ghosts, who existed in multiple dimensions at once. The gravity shapers, who treated space itself like clay to be molded. And most intriguingly, she found the humans. They were newcomers to the galactic scene, barely space-capable by most standards. Their ships were ugly, practical things that violated a dozen assembly design protocols. Their messages were direct to the point of rudeness, filled with something the Nevidians' translators struggled to convey. Was it humor? Defiance? Both. Hey, anyone else notice the big patch of nothing-eating planets out on the rim? Because that seems like something we should be talking about. The message had been sent on an open channel, its encryption so basic it was practically a shout into the void. The sender identified themselves only as Human Fleet Command and included a string of coordinates where interested parties could come help us kick some cosmic horror ass. The Council debated for another full day before authorizing a response. By their standards, it was the fastest decision in their recorded history. "We are the Nevidians," they transmitted. "We have observed the entity you reference. We have data." The human response came less than an hour later. "Cool. Bring your data and whatever else you've got. We're putting together a party. The assembly's not invited." First observer Naira, who had watched the shadow grow from the first anomaly, volunteered to go. As she boarded her whisper ship, it tall rippling with patterns of determination that no other Nevidian could ever remember seeing, she reflected that perhaps 10,000 years of peace had prepared them for this moment in an unexpected way. They knew how to watch. They knew how to learn. And now, finally, they knew how to act. The shadow continued to grow. But for the first time since it appeared, something else was growing faster. Hope, carried on wings of starlight and defiance, burning bright against the darkening sky. The coordinates led Naira's whisper ship to a place that shouldn't exist. A massive space station cobbled together from derelict ships, abandoned mining platforms, and what appeared to be several repurposed assembly luxury yachts. It hung in the space between systems, in the dark places where respectable species never ventured. They called it Haven's Wake, named after the first world the Void Collective had consumed. The humans had a habit of turning tragedy into motivation. Commander Raj Singh of the Human Expeditionary Force greeted Naira in a docking bay that somehow managed to accommodate vessels of wildly different designs. A Pyrrhian ship that seemed to be perpetually on fire was berthed next to a quantum ghost vessel that existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously. "Welcome to the Resistance," Singh said, not even blinking at Naira's massive size or bioluminescent communications. The translator rendered his speech pattern as remarkably direct, almost aggressive by Nevidian standards. "Nice light show. That how you folks talk?" Naira flashed an affirmative pattern, which her translator rendered into human speech. Singh nodded, already moving on to practical matters. "Your data on the Void Collective. How current is it?" "We have observations dating back to first contact," Naira replied, "including complete sensor readings of their consumption process." "Perfect. The others are waiting in what we're calling the war room. Fair warning, it's a bit chaotic by your standards." The war room turned out to be a converted cargo hold. Holographic displays showed the Void Collective's advance from multiple angles. A Pyrrhian commander named Blazewing hovered near the ceiling, their body a controlled inferno. 3 quantum ghosts phased in and out of reality as they argued strategy, their voices echoing from different dimensions. But most striking were the gravity shapers. They didn't so much stand as flow, their bodies constantly manipulating the space around them. Their leader, who called themselves Deep Curve, was currently demonstrating a battle tactic by turning a section of the room's gravity sideways. "The assembly called us unstable," Blazewing announced, flames flickering with what Naira's translator suggested was amusement. "Said we lacked the proper temperament for civilized space. They said humans were too aggressive," Singh added, pulling up a tactical display. "Too unpredictable. Funny how those become valuable traits when something's eating your worlds." The next hours were unlike anything in Nevidian history. These outcasts didn't debate. They argued, challenged, invented. Ideas flew faster than photons, each species contributing their unique perspective. The quantum ghosts could track the Void Collective's movements through multiple dimensions, revealing patterns invisible to conventional sensors. The Pyrrhians' natural energy manipulation could disrupt the Collective's consumption process. The gravity shapers could create space-time distortions that even the Collective couldn't digest. And the humans, they turned impossibilities into battle plans. "Look," Singh explained, pointing to a simulation of the collective's attack pattern. They're not just consuming matter, they're consuming order, structure. They're like a cancer in reality itself. That tracks with our observations, Naira confirmed, her patterns shifting thoughtfully. Their consumption rate increases with the complexity of the target. So we give them indigestion. Singh's grin was pure predator. The quantum ghosts can make anything uncertain. The Pyrians can inject chaos energy. The gravity shapers can warp space itself. And your people, Observer Naira, you can watch and predict where they'll strike next. A quantum ghost commander named Probability Storm phased partially through the table. The Assembly would never approve such tactics. They believe in orderly battles, proper protocols. The Assembly isn't here. Blazewing interrupted, their flames burning higher. They're too busy filing reports about the proper procedure for evacuating doomed worlds. Deep Curve's gravity manipulation created a perfect model of the Void Collective's next predicted target. We need a name, they announced. Something to make the Assembly's bureaucrats choke on their reports. The Chaos Legion, Singh suggested, then laughed at the patterns of distress that rippled across Naira's skin. Too dramatic. How about the opposition force? The Defiance Initiative, Naira offered, surprising herself with the suggestion. 10,000 years of restraint, and now here she was, naming an illegal military operation. The name stuck. Within days, more outcasts arrived, the stellar dancers, whose ships moved like poetry through space, the mind weavers, telepaths deemed too invasive for polite society. Even a handful of rogue assembly species who decided that survival was more important than regulations. They began training together, learning to coordinate their disparate abilities. The humans proved surprisingly adept at finding ways to combine seemingly incompatible powers. They called it thinking outside the box, though the idiom gave the translators fits. Naira watched it all, recorded everything. She observed how the Pyrians learned to channel their fire through the quantum ghost's dimensional phases, how the gravity shapers learned to work with the stellar dancers to create gravitational weapons that moved like living things, how the humans seemed to thrive on impossibility, turning disadvantages into advantages with remarkable creativity. But most importantly, she observed how these outcasts, these rejects and rebels, formed something that the Assembly with all its protocols and procedures had never managed, a true community. They shared meals, though the Pyrians had to eat in a specially reinforced chamber, told stories, learned each other's ways. The humans called it found family, another concept that the translators struggled with, but that Naira was beginning to understand. Family wasn't just about shared origins, it was about shared purpose, shared struggle, shared hope. As she recorded these observations in her personal log, a priority alert flashed across Haven's wake sensors. The Void Collective had changed course. They weren't heading for another outlying colony. They were moving straight for the Nevidian homeworld. The Defiance Initiative was about to face its first real test, and the galaxy was about to learn why some species were considered too dangerous for polite society. The first battle of the Defiance Initiative began with a joke, or at least what humans called a joke. "Hey Void Collective." Singh broadcast on all frequencies as the combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Knock knock. The collective, a writhing mass of darkness larger than a small moon, actually paused in its advance toward the Nevidian homeworld. Its response came as bursts of corrupted data, which the translators rendered as confusion. "This is the part where you say, 'Who's there?'" Singh continued, while the fleet moved into attack formation. The Pyrian ships formed a burning wedge, their hulls wreathed in controlled plasma. The quantum ghosts phased their vessels through multiple dimensions, creating a net of probability distortions. The gravity shapers began their complex dance, warping space itself into weapon and shield. The Void Collective responded with a wave of antimatter tendrils, reaching out to consume the approaching fleet. "Entropy," Singh shouted, giving the signal. The battle that followed defied conventional physics. The Pyreans ignited artificial suns, their ships becoming points of pure energy that burned holes in the collective's mass. The quantum ghosts transformed solid matter into waves of probability, making parts of the collective exist and not exist simultaneously. The gravity shapers, led by Deep Curve, created a maze of spatial distortions that trapped segments of the collective in pockets of twisted spacetime. The stellar dancers wove between these distortions, their ships moving in patterns that somehow disrupted the collective's ability to maintain cohesion. And the humans? They did what humans do best. They improvised. Entropy who? Sing's voice came through the command channel as his ship dove straight into a breach created by the Pyreans. The answer came in the form of a specially modified quantum torpedo, its warhead containing a piece of pure chaos engineered by the combined efforts of all initiative species. When it detonated, it didn't just damage the collective. It introduced fundamental disorder into its structure. The Void Collective, an entity that consumed order and complexity, found itself being force-fed entropy itself. The result was spectacular. Whole sections of its mass began to break down, unable to maintain coherence in the face of artificially induced chaos. That's the problem with being the cosmic horror. Sing transmitted as the collective reeled. Sometimes you meet someone crazier than you are. The Nevidians, watching from their cloud cities, recorded everything. They observed how the outcasts fought not as individual species, but as a single organism, each playing to their strengths while covering others' weaknesses. The Pyreans would create openings that the quantum ghosts would exploit, while the gravity shapers would contain the aftermath, and the stellar dancers would clean up anything that escaped. But even as they celebrated their first victory, the observers noted something troubling. The Void Collective was learning, adapting. Each time a tactic worked, the entity would develop countermeasures. By the end of the battle, it had already become resistant to the pure chaos weapon. They're evolving faster than predicted, Naira reported, her patterns showing deep concern. Our models suggest they will develop immunity to our current strategies within 3 more engagements. Then we'll just have to evolve faster, Singh replied. The human's vital signs showed elevated stress levels, but his voice remained confident. That's the thing about rules. Once you decide to break them, you've got infinite possibilities. The initiative's victory had bought them time, but not much. The Void Collective retreated, but its rate of consumption in other sectors increased. It was growing stronger, smarter, more dangerous. But so were they. The Pyreans began experimenting with new forms of energy manipulation, pushing their natural abilities beyond safe limits. The quantum ghosts explored deeper dimensions, seeking ways to attack the collective from angles it couldn't defend against. The gravity shapers started studying the fundamental forces that held reality together, looking for more points to exploit. And the humans kept coming up with ideas that made the other species censor a raised spark in protest. They called it brainstorming, though the mind weavers pointed out that no actual storms were involved in the process. What if, Singh proposed during one session, we stopped trying to fight entropy with entropy? What if we went the other way? Maximum order, right at their center. The implications made Naira's patterns ripple with a mixture of horror and fascination. You're suggesting we try to force organization onto a being that consumes it. The energy requirements would be impossible. Singh grinned. That's kind of our specialty. The next few days saw the initiative's base transform into something between a laboratory and a madhouse. The Pyreans worked with the gravity shapers to create contained points of perfect symmetry, spaces where entropy simply couldn't exist. The quantum ghosts contributed their understanding of probability manipulation, while the stellar dancers helped design delivery systems that could penetrate the collective's defenses. The Nevidians, to everyone's surprise, including their own, found themselves taking on a more active role. Their 10,000 years of passive observation had given them insights into the nature of order and chaos that proved invaluable. We're going to need a name for this weapon, Deep Curve announced as they finished the final calculations. The space around them curved in patterns that matched their excitement. Operation Order 66. A human lieutenant suggested, then quickly explained. It's from an old Earth story. Operation Paradigm Shift. Naira offered instead, her patterns forming the complex symbols that represented hope in her people's language. As they prepared for their second major engagement, Naira updated her observations. She noted how the outcasts had moved beyond mere cooperation into true innovation. How their differences, the very things that had made them unacceptable to the assembly, had become their greatest strengths. The Void Collective was about to learn another lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones who follow the rules of reality, but the ones who decide to rewrite them entirely. The Defiance Initiative's momentum lasted exactly 3 battles and 4 days. Then the Void Collective showed them why it had consumed 1,000 worlds. It started during what should have been a routine defense of the Pyrean outer colonies. The initiative fleet arrived in perfect formation, Operation Paradigm Shift primed and ready. The collective appeared to be following predicted patterns, reaching out with its usual consumption tendrils. Then everything went wrong. The collective didn't just adapt to their tactics, it turned them back on the fleet. It had learned to manipulate quantum states, throwing the quantum ghosts into dimensional chaos. It created gravity wells that trapped the stellar dancers in their own flight patterns. It even found a way to dampen the Pyreans' energy manipulation, leaving their ships cold and vulnerable. Full retreat. Sing's voice cut through the chaos as ship after ship went dark. This is not a suggestion, people. Get out of here. The Nevidian observers recorded their worst defeat to date. 47 ships lost. 312 crew members presumed consumed. The Pyrean colony fell within hours, its sun-harvesting platforms becoming part of the ever-growing darkness. Back at Haven's wake, the mood was grim. The quantum ghosts flickered erratically, their usual dimensional control shaken by the experience. The Pyreans burned so hot with frustration that they had to be contained in special chambers. Even the humans were quiet, which Naira's observation suggested was a dire sign. They didn't just beat us. Deep Curve stated, their gravity manipulations creating unsettling patterns in the war room. They evolved beyond us. They're using our own strengths against us. Not just using them. Naira's patterns showed deep concern as she displayed her analysis. They're improving them. Their quantum manipulation is more efficient than the ghosts. Their gravity control more precise than the Shapers. They're taking our innovations and perfecting them. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected source. One of the Mind Weavers, who had previously served mainly in support roles, stepped forward. Their telepathic broadcast was so strong it made everyone's translation devices crackle. They can copy our abilities, the Mind Weaver, who called themselves Deep Thought, projected. But they cannot copy who we are. What we are. They understand the physics of our powers, but not the spirit behind them. Sing, nursing a cup of what humans called coffee, looked up sharply. Go on. The collective consumes complexity, yes. It absorbs and improves upon physical systems. But there is one type of complexity it has never successfully replicated: consciousness, awareness, the spark that makes each species unique. The humans had a phrase for the moment that followed. You could hear a pin drop. Even the Pyreans' constant burning seemed to quiet. Are you suggesting? Naira's patterns formed slowly, carefully, that we stop fighting them with physics and start fighting them with personality. Precisely. Deep Thought's telepathic voice carried a hint of what might have been amusement. They can copy our abilities, but they cannot copy our chaos, our creativity, our willingness to try the impossible simply because we haven't been told we can't. The energy in the room shifted. The quantum ghosts began phasing in patterns that somehow looked excited. The gravity shaper's spatial distortions took on new, almost playful configurations. They can't copy what they can't quantify, Singh said, and this time his grin had a dangerous edge. And there's nothing less quantifiable than a bunch of outcasts who don't know when to quit. The next 12 hours saw Haven's wake transform into what the humans called a brainstorming session from hell. Every species contributed not their technical knowledge, but their unique perspectives, their cultural quirks, their particular brands of chaos. The Pyreans shared their fire dances, ritual movements that defied predictable patterns. The stellar dancers taught their space songs, melodies that somehow affected the fabric of reality itself. The mind weavers offered fragments of dreams, impossible thoughts that existed outside normal consciousness. And the humans, they taught everyone how to improvise. The key, Singh explained while helping a group of gravity shapers learn Earth jazz music, is to stop thinking about what should work and start thinking about what couldn't possibly work. Nara observed it all, her patterns shifting between fascination and what might have been the Nevidian equivalent of joy. They weren't just developing new tactics, they were creating a new culture, a hybrid of all their species' most unpredictable elements. The Void Collective had evolved beyond their weapons, but it was about to face something far more dangerous than mere technology. It was about to face art. As they prepared for their next engagement, Naira added a personal note to her observations. Perhaps this is why the Assembly feared us. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were capable of becoming something entirely new, something that could not be classified, controlled, or predicted. The stars trembled, but not from the collective's approach. They trembled because the outcasts were about to show the galaxy why some songs are too dangerous to be sung in polite company. They called it Operation Beautiful Disaster because humans insisted everything needed a name. And this plan was either going to be spectacularly beautiful or catastrophically disastrous, possibly both. The Void Collective found them near the remains of Haven, perhaps drawn by the sheer improbability of what they were attempting. The initiative fleet wasn't in any recognizable formation. Instead, the ships moved in patterns based on ancient stellar dancer ceremonies, their paths describing impossible geometries through space. The Pyrean vessels pulsed with energy that followed Earth music rhythms, everything from classical symphonies to what humans called death metal. Quantum ghost ships phased in and out of reality in time with these beats, creating a visual display that the humans compared to a rave in space. Even the Nevidian whisper ships had joined the dance, their subtle movements adding layers of complexity to the growing pattern. Naira's vessel traced patterns of her people's oldest stories through the void, stories about the birth of stars and the dreams of gas giants. At the center of it all, the human ships moved in ways that made navigation computers scream in protest. They broke every rule of space combat, every principle of tactical engagement. They flew like they'd never heard of physics, let alone agreed to obey its laws. The Void Collective paused. Naira's instruments detected massive computational efforts as it tried to analyze the scene before it. The entity that had consumed 1,000 worlds was, for the first time, confused. Now, Singh's voice carried across all frequencies. Hit them with everything we've got. And I mean everything. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a performance. The Pyreans unleashed their fire in patterns learned from human dancers, creating burning mandalas in space. The gravity shapers warped reality according to musical scores written by stellar dancers. The quantum ghosts phased between dimensions in sequences based on Nevidian poetry. Mind weavers broadcast dreams directly into the collective's computational matrix, not attacking thoughts, but stories. Stories about outcasts finding family among the stars, about broken rules and beautiful mistakes, about hope that defied probability and love that ignored physics. The collective tried to adapt, tried to find patterns it could copy and improve upon. But there were no patterns, only art, expression, emotion. It attempted to consume a Parian energy construct and found itself trying to digest a burning sonata. It reached for a quantum ghost ship and encountered a quantum uncertainty principle expressed as interpretive dance. The thing about chaos, seen broadcast as the collective's mass began to show signs of instability, is that it's not just random. True chaos is what happens when order becomes so complex it loops back around to looking like disorder. It's what happens when you take all the rules and turn them into art. The entity that had evolved beyond their weapons found itself facing something it couldn't evolve beyond. There was no optimal solution to a symphony, no tactical advantage to be gained over a dance, no defense against a story that made you feel. The Void Collective began to break apart, not from weapons or attacks, but from an overload of pure, unquantifiable experience. Its attempts to process and adapt to the initiative's performance caused cascading failures throughout its neural networks. Push harder. Sing ordered as gaps appeared in the collective's mass. Everyone, put your whole heart into it. Everything you've got. Make it beautiful. The Nevidians, who had spent 10,000 years practicing restraint, finally let go. Their ships moved in ways that expressed 10 millennia of silent watching, of quiet hoping, of patient waiting. They turned observation into art, and that art became a weapon. The stellar dancers wove through the chaos like threads through a tapestry, their movements adding new layers of meaning to the performance. The Mind Weavers broadcast the experience of the battle itself, creating a recursive loop of sensation and emotion that overwhelmed the collective's ability to process reality. And in the middle of it all, humanity's ships continued to break every rule ever written about how things were supposed to move through space. They turned combat into improvised jazz, tactical doctrine into street dance, and somehow made it all work. The end, when it came, was both anticlimactic and perfectly appropriate. The Void Collective, the entity that had threatened to consume the galaxy, simply stopped. Its mass dissolved not into destruction but into transformation, becoming a field of stellar debris that sparkled with traces of all the art that had unmade it. Did we just defeat an eldritch horror with an impromptu space concert? Someone asked over the command channel. Technically, Naira's patterns formed what she had learned was humor. I believe we defeated it with applied cultural cross-pollination in a zero-gravity environment. The celebration that followed broke even more rules than the battle had. Species that the Assembly had deemed too dangerous to associate with each other found ways to share joy across the barriers of biology and physics. The Pyrians learned human victory dances. The quantum ghosts tried to teach everyone five-dimensional party games. The Mind Weavers shared the emotional high of triumph across the entire fleet. In the aftermath, as Haven's wake filled with the sounds and sensations of victory, Naira completed her final observation. She noted that the Assembly had been right about one thing. They were all dangerous, but not because of their powers or their differences. They were dangerous because they had learned to connect, to create, to transform their outsider status from weakness into strength. They had proved that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't order or chaos, but the ability to turn both into art. The Assembly would probably never approve of what they had done. But as Naira watched humans teaching Pyrians to headbang, while quantum ghosts attempted to ghost dance in sync with stellar dancers, she realized something important. Approval had never been the point. The point was to find your people, even if those people happened to be outcasts, rebels, and impossibilities given form. Even if finding them meant breaking every rule in the book. Or perhaps, especially then. The stars sparkled with the remnants of their victory performance, and in their light, a new kind of family celebrated. Not one bound by genetics or treaties or assembly approval, but by something far stronger. The shared experience of breaking all the right rules, for all the right reasons. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, their song continued to echo, a warning and a promise to the galaxy. Never underestimate the power of outcasts who learn to dance together.